Keen to get underway. Hope everyone's going well, and I hope you can all hear me. Thumbs up from Joel. Thanks, Joel. What an amazing weekend. Hope everyone enjoyed, got some sunshine. I think we've got to wish for some rain now, though, as well. Dry July took on new meaning, I think, for me over the last month. It's been very dry. It's great to have so many people join us this morning for exploring the conservation dividend, a key element of the Department for Environment and Water's 2025 nature-based tourism strategy, or 2025 parks strategy, and obviously a fundamental element of the co-investment fund that the Environment and Water Department is administering. It's wonderful to see industry and ENGOs come together through this workshop today. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which we work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. We must always acknowledge and recognise our First Nation peoples. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Sean De Bruin. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Tourism Industry Council here in South Australia. Today's session will be recorded and we'll post it on our website so people can have free access to it. So we welcome your engagement after the session as well. I'd ask, in terms of meeting protocols, please keep yourself on mute. Use the chat function to raise comments and questions. I know today's presenters are really keen to have engagement as we work through this topic today. This session is part of the Nature-Based Tourism Capability Program. And next week, we'll be having a session on community and Indigenous engagement for success, another critical element of the co-investment fund. And we'll be sending out an EDM on that later this week, but it's likely to be the same time as today, but next week. Would also like to acknowledge Department of Environment and Water and Nature Alliance for their support of this workshop today. This is a key topic to understand the principles for nature-based tourism, and the conservation dividend vision is obviously something that everyone who's putting a proposal into the co-investment fund needs to have absolute clarity on. And so we're really pleased to have today's speakers provide that clarity. Without any more from me, I'll now hand over to our first two speakers from the Department for Environment and Water, Christina, who is the Project Manager for the Co-Investment Fund. I hope I'm correct in saying the Co-Investment Fund, Christina. And also Jason, who is the Manager of Conservation and Threatened Species, both from the Department for Environment and Water. Please come off mute, and over to you, Christina and Jason.
Hello. Hi, my name is Christina. I'm the manager of the Co-Investment Fund, project manager. I'm going to share a presentation with Jace, so hopefully my IT works. So I'll be sharing the screen shortly.
The other element I should have said, Christina, was also I'm the time Nazi as well. So we're up for a punchy session today, so I'll keep our speakers and I'll keep the session, and we'll all be done and dusted by 11 AM this morning. Please go, Christina.
Thanks, Sean. While Christina's just getting the slides ready, I'll just introduce myself. You don't need to see a picture of me. I'm nothing to look at. I'm no Rembrandt. I'm Jason Heim. I'm the Manager of Conservation and Threatened Species, and I've been working with the Tourism and Economic Development team and my team to try to start unpacking what is a conservation dividend, and we'll talk about that a bit more. Over to you, Christina.
Cool. So the first thing that we wanted to say is that it's a nature-based tourist co-investment fund. So it's more than tourists, it's about nature-based tourists. And we see the nature-based tourists like the sweet spot between the conservation, the community, and the economy. So that's kind of the three angles, and it is reflected on the objectives of the fund. To help us sort of kind of talk about what this sweet spot is, the co-investment fund developed these principles, which they're on the website. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these principles we define, and one of them is the conservation dividend, which Jace will be going into detail. So the first principle is about the enterprise being compatible with the natural and cultural values. So this is about the site, including the built and natural cultural heritage, to be compatible with the site. So I have a very good example here on the presentation between the kind of playgrounds you see in a national park versus the playground you will see somewhere else. So this is a very kind of simple example, but it reflects, for example, in terms of we see nature-based tourism as, for example, eco-accommodation, but probably not a high-rise hotel. We see things like eco-tours and things like that be compatible with the environment, but certain things won't be done compatible or that fit for the nature-based tourist concept. So this principle is about finding, you know, a product that is compatible with nature-based tourist principles. The second principle is about the sustainable design and operation of facilities. So there's a lot of talk going about the sustainability of it, the reuse, the use of the right materials, the recycle, to be able to kind of minimize the use of resources, repurpose things, leave no trace. So all those kind of concepts about sustainability and the technology we have now, we want to see implemented in nature-based tourist projects for the fund. So that's what this principle is about. And it is about the operation of it, but it also has to do a lot about the establishment of the operation to reduce the impact of establishment of the operation. The third principle is about the stakeholders and community benefits, and this has a little bit about to do with what we're talking about, that three side, the community, the environment, and the economy. So, and a lot of the nature-based tourist operators that we see today already embrace this, about source the resources locally, about engaging the local community, about producing, I guess, developing products that benefit the local community. So this is pretty much another area where the enterprise should be contributing to. Another area which we kind of see as very often in nature-based tourist enterprises, and definitely something the fund is looking for, is this education and advocacy. So while some of the tourist opportunities may not emphasize that much in educating the person participating on the tour, there's definitely an emphasis for educating and providing learning opportunities and linking the people that participate on the enterprise with the nature and cultural values of the site. So that's another principle we're looking for. We also kind of hoping that the enterprises will be looking at achieving the best practices. And this is Eco certificate, but any other certificate. So trying to provide the best visitor experience and quality experiences as much as possible. And this is kind of trying to provide quality, I guess, develop quality products and experiences as much as anything else. And as to finalize the principle, the fund is looking for a specific conservation dividend. So this is in addition to the principles I have been going through, which we're expecting to see in nature-based tourist enterprises. So above all of that, the fund will be assessing applications for having a sort of a specific conservation dividend. And Jace is gonna run us through how this looks like. We have a lot of discussion, and it's a little bit new. So some enterprises are already doing it, but it's something definitely a little bit new out there. So I thought there's a little bit of time here to discuss how this looks and how can that be delivered. So I'll pass it to Jace from here.
Thanks, Christina. So we're just going to explore a little bit more about what is a conservation dividend. And the co-investment fund applications we're looking for them to explain how their enterprise delivers an ongoing, meaningful and direct contribution to conserving the natural and cultural values of nature, the site or places that it leverages from. And as Christina said, many existing operators already create conservation dividends through things like monitoring and research or restoration and enhancement. And so this is a way of strengthening that. And we've broken it down into 3 key bits. Ongoing, that's an ongoing contribution for the life of the enterprise, or even going beyond it. That it's targeted, that it's a link to the nature, the park or place which the enterprise is leveraging from, and that it has conservation outcomes, that these are tangible and measurable, that you can actually point to those things and say, this is what we're doing. Next slide, mate. Yep. Now, the Nature-Based Tourism Co-investment Fund has actually got 5 criteria, and the specific conservation dividend is one of those 5. So you need to hit off on each of those 5 areas in order to be able to have a successful application. So to give you a little bit more of an unpacking of the vision, we're looking at enterprises deliver on an ongoing and meaningful direct contribution, and that can be financial or through other means, and we'll talk about some examples in a sec, to conserving the natural and cultural values of the site or places that it takes or that it leverages from, that it receives those benefits from, and in effect giving back to what it uses. And some examples of that could be habitat enhancements for key local biodiversity. And these might be even part of the venture itself, like fencing or boardwalks. And you might think, well, how does a boardwalk provide a conservation dividend? Well, just by reducing the impact or the potential impact that it could have on biota, and then explaining why you have a boardwalk as opposed to just randomly traipsing through the bush. And how that provides conservation outcomes and what are the threats to that environment that you're working through. Volunteering, providing in-kind contributions from visitors or from staff into conservation projects. Educational or behavioural components, so teaching people about how they can reduce the impact on something or an issue that's related to your enterprise when they go home. Activating people, so encouraging people to join friends of groups, or also the activation of heritage. So people actually actively going to a heritage site then creates a revenue stream which then allows funding to be used to preserve that site so that it can continue to be used. One might be, another idea might be donating additional land to the nature conservation estate. So maybe purchasing some land or setting aside some land for conservation and including a provision for that ongoing management. And then the other one, which is one which has often popped up, is just making a direct financial contribution. That could be a levy fee or a matching donation or an allocation of percentage of profit to go into ongoing conservation, whether that's management of a species or an issue or threats, or even monitoring and research by the operator or your partner that does the work. So these are all options, and these are just really broad descriptions of examples. They're not an exhaustive list. The whole thing about conservation dividend is that when you create an enterprise or when you continue an enterprise, the conservation dividend might change through time. So to begin with, it might be investing in a research project or supporting a research project, and then afterwards it might be implementing the findings of that research. And that might be what you're doing throughout the life of your enterprise, rather than it being one thing that you're doing all the time throughout the life of your program. It's really how you think you can make create a benefit to conservation as a result. And our last slide is really just keep in mind, we're here to help you. We want to actively work with you to develop ideas and proposals. And that comes from a clear recognition that if we just tell you what you need to do or what we think you need to do, well, that doesn't really work. It's how do we jointly develop something that is your idea that you think you want to pursue and try to create the maximum benefit out of that idea, and maybe even flesh out some ideas, because there might be something which you're thinking and you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that because that's just a bit too crazy, or I could never make that work. but they're the kinds of ideas that maybe through exploration and discussion, we can make work and we can actually help you make live, because you may have a vision which is different to the ones that we've talked about here, but could still have real benefit. And so we don't want to exclude anything, but we want to actively work with you to develop those ideas as a part of your proposals. So hopefully, Sean, we've kept the time. You haven't had to get out the squeaky duck or anything to hurry us up, and we can open up to any questions if that's the way you want to go.
No, you've done well, Jace. Well done, Christina. There is one question on the chat, Peter Friedman, talking about assuming a successful application, will the project be organised into milestones with grant money divided into progress payments coinciding with milestone completions? So that's something that's probably a little bit broader, Christina, in terms of the co-investment fund.
It doesn't talk about milestones for conservation dividends for the fund. So it's probably a little bit outside of this theme today. It's all on the guidelines, and you can contact us. The fund is designed to be paid on reinvestment upon completion, but a fund or grant agreement will be negotiated with the successful proponent, which may look at milestones or may look at a stage delivery, depending the situation. And that is for the fund. In terms of the conservation dividend, we'll probably be looking at some kind of milestones as well, but it's kind of a totally different level. And again, as Jason said, we'll be here to kind of support you through that. And there's also some partner organizations we were speaking today who can also help you develop those plans.
Great, thanks, Christina. We will have time at the end for questions and comments. And Jason, you're part of that panel discussion. So I've got one question, but I might save it for the end of this workshop. A really good presentation. We'll move into our next presentation now. Natasha Davis, the CEO of SA Nature Alliance, is going to speak to us about the role of Nature Alliance, the principles to enhance the guidelines, and also who Nature Alliance is, and then she'll be talking us through some case study examples of conservation dividend as well. Over to you, Natasha.
Thanks very much, and great to see so many of you online this morning. 69, I can see. A special welcome to some of my colleagues, and a couple of them will be participating in the panel, and Sir Duncan McKenzie from Friends of Parks, President of Friends of Parks, and Hugo Hopton, who's the CEO of the Nature Foundation. I'll briefly introduce him during this talk as well. Now, when I share my screen, I can't see any of you, so it's very weird. I'm talking to myself. So if anyone, Sean, if anyone raises his hand and wants to ask a question, I'll pause briefly because I've kind of got two parts. So I'll pause and come back to life and see if there's anything you want to comment on during the talk. So here we go, and goodbye to all of you because I will not see you. I haven't worked this bit out yet on this computer. So the Nature Alliance is so yes, I'm the chair of the Nature Alliance, which I just sort of do as a kind of, it's not my main day job. My main job is the CEO of Trees for Life. The Nature Alliance is a group of 12 groups, organisations that are all environmental NGOs. That's the acronym ENGO, if you're wondering what that is. We all work in South Australia to basically help conserve and restore our precious natural environment. We've got lots of different roles. Some of us work more on land, like Nature Foundation, Nature Glenelg Trust, they're land owners and manage their own estate. Friends of Parks, as you're aware, so they have numbers of groups that work in the national parks. The Landcare groups also, that Landcare Association oversees all the different Landcare groups and helps them coordinate. And groups like Trees for Life and Greening Australia, we do on-ground work, working with landholders and community members, trying to restore vegetation and help protect existing. So we've got quite a wide range of activities there, and I'll share a bit more what we do. Some Greening Australian Conservation volunteers are also national. So as you can see, it's quite an eclectic group. But I'll come back to our capabilities, but what we hear it to do is to really get better on-ground outcomes. By working together, we can make sure we coordinate what we're doing on the ground, but we can also coordinate when we connect with other groups, with government and with groups like yourselves, so we can present a more consistent approach and have a shared vision for what we'd like to see for nature conservation in South Australia. Really importantly, we're about getting people better connected to nature through education and through experiences, and that's obviously a big part of what nature-based tourism is about. So just come back to what we do. We do a lot of on-ground work. We do work that engages people. We do a lot of very technical, scientifically based work. We work across mostly on land conservation, not so much marine, although not so much on-ground marine work, although we do a lot of advocacy for marine, wetlands, carbon plantings, and we also deliver some ecotourism activities ourselves, which I will share with you a little bit later on. This year we launched a website, which I encourage you to have a look at, and that gives a great overview of what we do and who we are. And as part of that, we've got a vision for nature, which is a high-level, our high-level outcome statements of what we'd like to see in this state. I think it's really important to acknowledge that nature's not represented in our accounting. We don't account for all the amazing services, the soil, the water, the clean air, the biodiversity. It doesn't show up in our national accounts. So that means things that aren't measured often aren't valued and don't get the investment that they require. So what we're trying to do is say, look, for the health and well-being of our economy and our community, we do need to raise the bar and we need to invest more in our nature conservation. It's absolutely critical. With climate change, we're going to need a healthy natural environment more and more. And soil and vegetation, obviously a big part of the climate solution as well. We recognise the really important role that First Nations play in managing our landscapes. And so people need nature. We've got a set of aspirations there because we know that we do need, for our physical health and mental well-being, we really do need to spend time in nature. We need a healthy natural environment. There's more and more scientific evidence about that. And we want people to spend time in nature, which is why we do support really good quality nature-based tourism. I think I personally, any opportunity I have to get out there camping or bushwalking is something that is very restorative. So if we have the chance to experience the wonder and peace and beauty of the world, we are better human beings. So nature-based tourism, yes, it is a growing area, and I'm sure all of you are aware of the financial benefits and economic opportunities. I love this picture of all those twitchers out there, our Blue Pot Reserve. So yeah, nearly 1 million domestic tourists went bird watching. Obviously, if you're going to go bird watching, you're going to need good quality habitat to do that. So that's why we see nature-based tourism as very much nature-enhancing tourism. Christina's already run through all the guidelines. We're certainly supportive of those, although in some areas we probably like to see even some even stronger guidelines, because it is important to recognise that not all kind of developments are appropriate for parks, as Christina has said that. But what we think the opportunity from nature-based tourism is to actually attract more investment into these areas. You know, you don't build a road and then just leave it there and not continue to do upgrades. So same with our natural areas. A lot of them have been degraded over the years. There are many, many threats that they face. So we do need to get more investment back, and the conservation dividend is one of those opportunities, and hopefully also we'll just see more government and private investment in general, because people recognise the incredible value of these areas for all aspects of our community. So national parks, yeah, well, it's important to remember their homes. We have our homes, and much of our wildlife relies on national parks as sanctuaries and other areas of private land and Crown land, and they will be increasingly important as we face climate change. Once you bowl over a beautiful piece of wilderness, you can't just patch it, put it back together. You might better put some vegetation back, but it's never going to be the same. So, you know, recognising that just like physical culture and traditional culture, that our natural heritage is a really irreplaceable part of our identity and our values. So I might just pause there, because it's really strange here talking, not seeing any of you here, and see if anyone's got any questions so far. Any questions? Or I'm going to leap into some more examples now.
I think, yeah, go into some more examples, Natasha, and then we'll do questions and comments at the end.
So, as Christina has shared, the conservation dividend is really an opportunity to get an ongoing benefit for our environment. The principles that she shared are great. I think a couple of things I'd like to really emphasise is that it's an opportunity for a long-term benefit. We'd like to see it as a reasonable level of investment. So it is something that's quite significant. This goes without saying, but I think it's important to highlight that it shouldn't be something it's replacing what government should be doing. So, for example, in our national parks, government has a responsibility to be managing the weeds there. So we don't want to have activities that are really replacing that. Monitoring is really important so that we can have accountability and showing that, yes, there's some really great on-ground results. And something I would like to highlight is that we'd love to see, I think involving a third party, there's a real benefit in that because it does provide opportunity for more transparency. So having independent delivery through a third party, or at least involving them in the design, and that's obviously we'd be delighted to be partners, but there are other groups out there who are able to partner as well. So that's something that's, I think, very important, that it's transparent and that it's also very clear what the benefits are. Now, as Jace said, look, there are some examples of this happening. You know, many tourism operators do great things to help protect their environment. We don't think there's anything of the vision that's in this nature-based tourism that has all those elements of being ongoing and having a sort of a transparent amount of resources that's dedicated to it. So this is an opportunity to really do something new and exciting in South Australia. And, you know, we're so well known in South Australia for our natural beauty. So let's see if we can really be world leaders in this. Because when you scratch around for examples, there aren't many amazing examples around Australia. So I think we can do something really great here. So what are some opportunities? Well, we've talked, Christina's given an example, we could look at expanding existing park networks. There's certainly many opportunities to create linkages between parks. There are many areas in both threatened plants and animals where there are opportunities to reintroduce them, which is a fantastic tourism experience, as well as having great ecological benefits. And there are many, many opportunities for restoration. So we're all familiar with restoration of land-based, you know, putting vegetation back, but there's a lot of opportunities with wetlands, with coasts, etc. And involving the visitors just gives such a great opportunity to enhance the visitor experience of going to, I mean, what could be more fulfilling than going to a natural area to experience the beauty of that place and learn about it, but also have an opportunity to give back. And in helping you, I guess that's why partly why we're here today is because we can help you get really good results with your conservation dividend. So the whole phase of the project, from the design and the delivering through to the monitoring. And there are a couple of the groups in particular who really specialise and have expertise in research and monitoring. So that's where we can help you design fantastic projects. So a couple of examples. So restoring a wetland or an area of native vegetation. So as you can see here, a picture of a site that's been lacking in water. So many areas need more environmental water in order to thrive. This is an area around the Murray floodplain. Now that's again a great opportunity for tourists to see what's happened, but also to really make a meaningful on-ground difference. This is another example where, yes, you could say a proportion, and this is obviously a very transparent transaction where a proportion of every service or product sold can be dedicated to a conservation project that might involve a rewilding or purchasing property. This is a picture of the hills where the bandicoots are very threatened, but we're trying to find appropriate habitat so they can be restored. So imagine if tourism could be part of that solution of actually providing more habitat for bandicoots. We get to see more of them out and about, and what a great national story for South Australia, or international story. And finally, just establishing perhaps an ongoing partnership or fund with a Nature Alliance member where it grows over time, although at the moment with interest rates, it's not going to be growing as much as the trees might be growing. And we can agree on some works, could be this is a paddock tree program we're delivering in the hills. It could be something that's delivered over time. Obviously, it needs to have that connection to the particular park or area where the development is happening. But again, you can see opportunity for something to be very marketable and amazing for visitors. So I'm just going to quickly flick to Hugo because he may have something to add to the examples we've just shared and briefly speak about the Nature Foundation.
Thanks, Natasha, and good morning, everybody. Good to see so many online. Just briefly about Nature Foundation. It's been around for about 40 years and has partnered closely with the South Australian Government and also the Commonwealth Government to protect really valuable parts of South Australia. We've got out of that, there's two big nature reserves up in the arid lands, in the rangelands, and we have opened them up for nature-based tourism, and you can see that on screen there, the bed night number over those 4 years. And we're really trying to seek people who want to know more about nature or spend time in nature. So we've got bird watching groups, native plant groups, geology groups, for example, coming through, as well as working with in partnership with schools to bring young Aboriginal students out to connect with country and learn a bit about what we do. This is perhaps just an idea for some nature-based operators and for the conservation dividend to fund some activities like that. So
Thanks,
Natasha, do you
Hugo.
want me to press on or stop there?
Oh, you could stop there, Hugo, and if you can come back in the panel discussion, that'd be great.
Sure.
The next example is BirdLife Australia, who have an amazing reserve called Blue Pot Reserve, which has won multiple awards, and it's in the mallee part of the state. And it's a very, very large patch of mallee vegetation, quite significant. In fact, it's the largest, as you see. It's got many, many nationally threatened species, and it's a great multi-purpose facility. So a lot of research going on there, a lot of restoration work, a lot of education, a lot of partnerships with universities, and a lot of tourism. And it really is a magnet for people that love to go there, and I've been there camping myself. And many, many bird watchers that go there. And one of the things that is the partnership there with tour operators. So professional tour operators come there, and they do have an agreement in terms of operation to make sure that everyone is operating in accordance with the natural values. And as Duncan tells me, everyone follows that perfectly. So they've had a really good experience partnering with professional tour operators. Is there anything I've missed there, Duncan, apart from the hundreds of awards, etc., that you really want to highlight?
Oh, no, I don't think so. It may come up in the questions and answers session, but I think you pretty much covered it.
Great.
The reserve's 23 years old as a conservation reserve.
So again, you know, another example where BirdLife own that land. So it's private conservation, which is becoming increasingly important, and also an opportunity for tourism. So Bush Heritage, you've probably heard of, an Australian Wildlife Conservancy. They also have properties in South Australia that do have opportunities for tourists to come and visit. But also it's that sort of working tourism where people go to have an experience of actually helping out, doing some volunteering as well, which is another thing, I think another really exciting opportunity to think about, integrating that volunteering as part of the conservation dividend. The final example I'm going to share as a case study is something that we've done at Trees for Life. We've actually partnered with quite a few private businesses over the years in our conservation and revegetation work, and we've partnered with Seven Hill Winery up in the Barossa, where they have some very important habitat for threatened flora. So we've done some work there over the years, and this one on Banrock Station has been part of our spiny daisy threatened plant recovery. Banrock's well known for their conservation work, but they actually invest their own resources into having ecological staff. And we've had a number of plantings of this endangered plant over 10 years. And it's part of the experience. Again, people go there to enjoy the beautiful wine, but also they get to learn about spiny daisy. It's also features on a wine label and they've had lots of great media coverage over the years. So, and you can see all those multiple benefits that come in when you can do this really well. And having an active long-term partnership with a conservation group means you can really get that excellent scientific knowledge, but also really helps with the credibility of the project. So what we do at SA Nature Alliance, yes, very broad. We have a lot of skills. I'll put this up again because it might be more relevant to you as we come to the end. We'd love to work with you. You can contact us via our website, or individually, you can come to the individual organisations. And please check out our website and learn a bit more about us. And we really thank you for the opportunity to present today. Over to you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. That was great. Apologies for getting your job title wrong in the introduction.
That's all right.
No, that was very informative. We'll open it up to questions and comments, and we've got 3 panelists that are going to engage in that way. Natasha has made herself available. We've got Jace from Jew and Duncan McKenzie. Duncan, I might just ask you to give us a quick comment on your role and your views in terms of the opportunity here for the tourism industry to work with nature and conservation groups. Those of you that don't know Duncan, many of you probably will. Duncan has a CV that is the longest CV I've ever seen, and it's a very distinguished career that he's had, including being the chair of our organisation for its first 5 years of its life. So over to you, Duncan, for a couple of early comments.
Okay, thanks, Sean. I don't know whether you're aware or not, but the largest segment worldwide of the tourism industry is nature-based tourism, and within that, the largest segment are bird watchers by far. So in Australia, with our large number of rare bird species, etc., as Natasha said, we're a magnet for bird watchers, etc. So just that one little area, I think, is very important when we're looking at developing our national parks. The Friends of Parks themselves have got 130 groups, 6,000 members that work in parks. So you can see that it's a very important area for nature conservation, and I think it's great that the government is looking at nature-based tourism or an expansion of it, as long as it's within set guidelines, etc. So I'm happy to answer any questions that may come along. Thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. I'll just go to the chat to start with. There's been quite a few comments on chat. Bushard and Jace, Duncan, Natasha, whoever can answer these questions, please chime in. So if you can see the chat function, Bush Adventures have asked a question about if we have a dream, how do we gain confidence and support to put forward our amazing, unique proposals? Do we have to phone someone in Adelaide or speak with local operators, managers? Jace, do you want to have a go at that first, and then maybe Natasha or Duncan, you can speak to that as well.
I'm going to have to phone a friend on that one. I'll have to just check with Christina. Maybe she's got the ability to answer that question. I think at the first instance, there's no problem with talking to local rangers or staff that you know in the region. But my guess is it would be talking to Christina and the team.
We're having trouble.
So yeah, we can answer this one. So definitely approach your local ranger or anyone that you know on the area. I have had some people approaching me, and a few other people go through your contacts. We do have a support service if you have a more developed idea of what you want to do. We have a support service for the fund in terms of application and how to apply and templates for business plans and all of that. So that is all on our website, which the details are on my presentations. We will be online after this chat. And then part of this, if your question about your dream is more about the conservation dividend, you can also you know, use some of the contacts that we're providing you today with, you know, Natasha and the Nature Alliance and a few other NGOs, and look online. But yeah, definitely approach, if you want to speak with the department, approach your local person, or if you have any contact or ranger. And if not, just contact our support service through the fund and we'll put you in contact with the right person.
So how do people get in contact with you, Christina or Jason?
So with us, if you haven't contacted us before and you don't have our details, go through the support service of the fund. The email address is due business. All the contact details are on my presentation and I can share it now on the chat. So that's a general email address, but it has a 1-day response turnaround, maximum 2. And they'll put you probably right, better than with Jason as probably contact you with your local ecologist, more of the area that you be looking at. So yeah, I share the details.
That's great, thank you. Natasha, do you have a comment on that, on contacting people?
Yes, yeah, very happy to chat. I've just put my email up in the chat, and I'm happy to take any queries from anyone. And you know, I'm pretty familiar with all the different roles and services provided by different Nature Alliance members, and I can also just flick it out there and say, look, you know, we've had this query, who's interested in talking more? So I'm happy to be a bit of a facilitator there.
Brilliant. Thanks, Natasha. Duncan, in terms of people getting in contact with Friends of Parks, how many groups are there around the state? Can you tell us that?
There's 130 groups. Well, there's another new one that's just come on yesterday. 131 groups spread right across the state, from right up north, right down to the south in Victoria, near Victoria, etc. Over 6,000 members. They're all back in action now after the release. They're able to get into work after the COVID stoppage, etc. So most of them are back and work in their parks. So yeah, over 6,000 members and 131 groups.
So the best way to find out the most relevant group for people, how do they do that, Duncan?
Okay, if you just look up the Friends of Parks group on the website, that'll give you all the information, or just email our secretary, Pam Smith. She's got a list of every group in the state, and our new website, which is just about to come out, also lists them all on a Google application there, shows you where they are in the state.
Brilliant, thanks Duncan. Next question from Jeanette, and this might be one for you, Christina, or Jason. Is the focus for grants on existing managed areas, precincts, or do you anticipate submissions to seek to open up new areas within parks?
So I better answer this one. So the focus areas are on the guidelines again, and are things that align with our nature-based tourism strategy and the current investment from the department through the Parks 2025 project. In terms of areas to open for the parks, we haven't sort of kind of highlighted the locations, as long as it aligns with the priorities I just mentioned. And it's not open just for parks, but also for crown land, reservoirs, forestry land. So there is much more than just national parks available or eligible for the fund. We are assessing more in terms of alignment with the strategies of the outcomes we want. So it's not about what it is, but making sure that we can, you know, deliver on those principles and the conservation dividend, all of that. So I will be encouraging people to look at the right place for the right project. And sometimes we may have a little bit of crown land adjacent to a national park where it will be more suitable, depending what the activity is. I hope that answered that question.
Great, that's very good. Thank you, Christina. The next question is from Claire Ellis. And I hope Claire's there. Claire's the chair of Ecotourism Australia and has done significant work here in South Australia as well as a consultant. Claire's asking a question in terms of, is there any difference in the grant assessment between conservation activities on parks lands and conservation activities on private lands, such as adjacent to a park? Again, this one might be for you, Christina. And once you've answered that, maybe Claire, if you're there, please come off mute and tell us a little bit about how Ecotourism Australia sees this opportunity in South Australia. Over to you first, Christina.
Sean, could you repeat it, the question again?
So is there any difference in grant assessment between conservation activities on park lands and conservation activities on private land, such as adjacent to a park?
No, so the answer is no. We're assessing for the ongoing outcomes and sort of the principles that Jace ran us for, but and that link with the values that you're using. So for example, if we're going to be working with some key marine mammals, then you're kind of expecting the outcome to benefit the species you leverage from. But is this happening within a park or in a private place? Doesn't matter. The funding though, so this is about the conservation dividend aspect of it, but the funding that the fund is providing is to be used in public land. So it is a co-investment fund for investment in public land. So you cannot use public funds into private land for the actual funding of it, but the conservation outcome, if it achieves those things we have been discussing through the presentation, it could be in private land. I hope I can explain it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Christina. Claire.
Can I ask a question? How are you going to help people? How's this fund going to help people who want to develop on private land? Because there's already a couple in the example where people got ideas for conservation on private land, conservation / tourism. So what is there? How's the strategy facilitating that process?
Yeah, Natasha, so I think that it's very clear what the fund is and what it isn't, and it is a fund for co-investment fund for public land, not for private. We do have the option of people who do a joint project where the public money will go to the public land and the private co-investment part will go to the private part. So let's say that is, a project like a tour happening both public and private, but the public money will have to be invested on the public land. And that's why we have opened it very extensively. And also, the fund is, there's other funds out there for tourists, there's other things, but this was very clearly defined to nature-based tourists in public lands. So that's crown land, national parks, forestry, reservoirs, heritage.
Thanks, Christina. And I think if you're unclear of that, I encourage you to contact Ju and ask for a case manager for your project and seek clarification from your Ju case manager early on in terms of what will qualify in terms of co-investment funding and what may not. And there may be projects where there's elements of infrastructure and both in public lands and private lands, and so it's a point that people will need clarified potentially as they draft up their application. Claire, a quick comment from you.
Thanks, Sean. I'll just say great to see the level of interest in this, and I'm obviously a great enthusiast in the fund itself and in the way that you're approaching it. So, looking across Australia as we do, my hat's off for you in South Australia taking this very proactive approach to it. So I'm keen to see the sorts of projects that come out, and honestly, realising it won't and it can't support everything, how we actually encourage many of the other ideas out there to actually come to fruition as well. Because I think this is a fabulous way forward and really helps South Australia be a leader in this. So well done. And for those, I can see we have many Ecotourism Australia members sitting in the across the screen as I've got you. And certainly if any of you need to come back to us for some further information, we're more than happy to try and help.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. Great to hear from you. Hope you're going well in Tassie. I assume you're in Tassie at the moment.
Yeah, we've got our moats up still, so we are actually hoping to travel to South Australia shortly. I think we're just opening up as we speak.
The next question is from Sean Brandon. I hope I haven't missed anyone's questions. This might be one for you, Natasha or Duncan. Keen to talk to anyone re conservation opportunities on a cattle station in South Australia. We are adjacent to a park and near a town and main service roads. Quite complex, so might need a bit of time with someone to work that opportunity through.
I might see if Hugo's got anything, because they work in this part of the state, or the arid areas. Would you got any comments on this, Hugo?
Yeah, very happy to talk. I'll put my contact details on the chat.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hugo. I think that's all the questions that I've seen on the chat.
Can I make one more comment, Sean?
Please.
About engaging with us. I know there's going to be a separate webinar, I think, on the consultation part of the guidelines. I just really encourage you, and this is what this is about, is giving you opportunities, especially with the friends groups, to get in early and have a chat about, we really want this to work and be a positive experience for everyone. I think there are some really, you know, there's so many ways tourism can happen that is really positive for the visitors, for the parks, etc. So getting in early before proposals get really well developed to talk to the right people, obviously due, but also to our sector, and particularly the groups that are working on parks. So I just really encourage you to do that, because you'll get really good ideas, but also you'll get, you know, you might get some advice on things that mightn't be the best idea for a park as well. So I think it's good to hear both those things early on in a project. So that's why we're really proactively working with your sector, because I think it is really, you know, it's really, really important that we do work together on this.
No, really good comment. Thanks, Natasha. I totally agree with her. Maybe Duncan, any final comment from you before I wrap the session up?
No, of course, Friends of Parks are more than happy to talk with anybody. So as I said, if you get onto the website, you'll find all our contact details, etc. And please get in touch with us. The beauty of that is you can go directly to a particular friends group that's working on a park that you may be interested in, and we can lead you through to these people for those discussions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Duncan. Thanks so much for participating. Hugo, any final comments from you?
Our experience is that nature-based tourism is a great initiative. The word's spread by mouth more than anything, and once you get going in it, our experience is it'll continue to grow and bring new opportunities to those involved. So thanks for today.
No, thanks, Hugo. Christina, final comment from the government.
Only to say, like, don't see this as a tick the box, the conservation dividend, but an opportunity to really embrace it and make a unique project or, you know, product for nature-based tourists. I really believe we can deliver something very special and achieve the three: the community, the economy, and the conservation. And also, if any doubts, just contact us. We do have a very great turnaround, a great team to provide you support with anything you need.
Brilliant. Thanks, Christina. I'm really grateful to all of our speakers today. The information's been first rate. You know, hopefully this is first of many engagements that ENGOs and industry will start working on projects collaboratively more and more in South Australia for mutually beneficial outcomes. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to the time you've taken to put those presentations together and provide that information. And also there's so many great tourism operators out there that I'm looking at on screen. It's wonderful to see our community engaging with this fantastic opportunity. And many of you have, you know, compelling stories to tell, and I'd love to throw to a few more of you and ask for your stories. I know some of you have amazing stories in terms of what's been done around conservation dividend in previous tourism operations and current tourism operations. That concludes today's session. Thank you again to all for attending, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you all again next week when we talk about consultation processes. Thank you.